Story 1. This happened to me, starting at Sterling & Co. was a fresh chapter. The office was quiet, eerily so, a stark contrast to my previous bustling workplace. I was eager to make a good impression. My manager introduced Eleanor Vance, my coworker. She offered a brief, shy nod. Eleanor was known for exceptional efficiency, a legend among senior staff. Her reputation for flawless work preceded her. Eleanor's workspace was a testament to her meticulous nature. Every pen, paperclip, and file was perfectly aligned. It was unnervingly neat, almost sterile. My own desk, even new, felt chaotic by comparison. Soon, I started noticing a peculiar habit. Eleanor often spoke, not to me, but to an empty chair positioned beside her desk. She'd direct comments and questions towards it. The first time I overheard, she muttered, "Thank you, that's exactly what I needed." I glanced over, confused. Seeing my gaze, she offered a faint, almost apologetic smile. "Just my assistant," she explained. I initially dismissed it as a quirky habit. Perhaps she was lonely, or it was a coping mechanism for the monotonous work. Many talked to themselves. Maybe this was just her version, a phantom colleague. Despite her odd habit, Eleanor's work was flawless. Reports were always on time, data impeccably accurate, deadlines met with uncanny precision. Her output was superhuman, beyond what one person could achieve. "My assistant helps me keep everything in order," she'd say if I commented on her speed. "It's invaluable." Her tone was always calm, almost detached, as if discussing a very real, present colleague. The quirkiness slowly morphed into something else. An undercurrent of unease settled. The sheer consistency of her assistant's presence, her interactions, felt too real to simply be imagination. I found myself subconsciously listening for her whispers, for any sign of this invisible helper. The office, once merely quiet, now felt charged with a subtle, imperceptible hum of unseen activity. Then the small things began. My favorite blue pen, always clipped to my notebook, vanished. I searched everywhere, frustrated, only for it to reappear days later, perfectly placed on Eleanor's desk. It wasn't just pens. My stapler, a specific sticky notepad, they would disappear from my desk, then resurface on hers, always neatly, as if borrowed and returned, but without a word. I started feeling inexplicable cold spots near Eleanor's area. Not a draft, but a sudden, localized drop in temperature that would send a shiver down my spine, even on warm days. It was unsettling. Faint, almost imperceptible whispers began. I'd hear them when Eleanor wasn't speaking, a sibilant murmur emanating from the empty chair, too soft to discern words, but undeniably there. I questioned my own sanity. Was I imagining things? The stress of a new job, the quiet office, maybe it was getting to me. I tried to rationalize it, but the occurrences were too consistent. Through all this, Eleanor remained perfectly calm, utterly oblivious to my growing discomfort. She'd continue her work, occasionally addressing the empty chair, her voice a low, steady murmur. A persistent, unsettling sense of being watched began to cling to me, especially when near Eleanor's desk. It was an invisible gaze, heavy and constant, making my skin crawl. My computer started experiencing bizarre glitches. Programs would freeze, files corrupt, but only when I was in my cubicle near Eleanor. As soon as I moved away, everything normalized. Important documents on my desk were subtly altered. A decimal point shifted, a date changed by a day. Small, almost unnoticeable changes that could have disastrous consequences if I hadn't double-checked. Files I'd been working on would go missing from my desktop, only to reappear later in a different folder or sometimes on Eleanor's shared network drive. It felt like deliberate, unseen interference. The whispers from the empty chair grew louder, more distinct, still unintelligible, but their presence was undeniable. They felt closer, more demanding, a constant low thrum beneath the office's quiet hum. I was no longer just feeling watched. I felt a tangible, unseen presence. It was a cold weight, a pressure in the air, a shadow that didn't quite exist yet made its presence known. Alina herself began to change. Her complexion grew noticeably paler, her skin taking on a waxy, almost translucent quality. The vibrant spark she once had, however subtle, was dimming. She became more gaunt, her cheekbones more pronounced, her frame thinner. It was as if something was slowly draining the life from her, yet she never seemed to eat or take breaks. Her eyes, once merely reserved, now held a distant, almost haunted look. They seemed to stare through me into something beyond, reflecting a deep weariness I couldn't comprehend. Yet her work performance remained unnervingly perfect. Flawless. It was as if the physical toll was irrelevant or perhaps a necessary exchange for the impeccable results. She never faltered. I never saw her yawn, never saw her look sleepy. She was always the first to arrive, the last to leave. It felt like she never slept, fueled by some unseen, relentless energy. The fear solidified. This wasn't just a quirky coworker, something truly sinister was at play. The invisible assistant wasn't imaginary, it was real, and it was taking something from Alina. One evening, I stayed late to finish a critical report. The office was quiet, save for the hum of the servers and Alina's soft murmurs. The silence was oppressive, charged with anticipation. I heard Alina still working, her keyboard clicking steadily. I tried to focus, but my attention kept drifting to her cubicle, a magnet for my apprehension. I felt a chill despite the warmth. The whispers from Alina's desk were suddenly clearer, not just a murmur but distinct, guttural sounds. A language I couldn't comprehend, yet felt inherently wrong, ancient, and deeply unsettling. Alina wasn't talking to the empty air now, she was responding. Her head tilted, as if listening intently, then she would nod or murmur a quiet yes, her voice strained, almost a plea. My blood ran cold. A manila file folder sitting on the corner of Alina's desk slid an inch across the polished surface, slowly, deliberately, as if pushed by an unseen hand. Then a distinct guttural whisper emanated from the empty chair itself. It wasn't human. It was deep, rasping, and filled with an ancient malevolence that pierced the silence, echoing in my ears. Alina gasped a small, choked sound and then collapsed forward onto her desk, her arms splayed amongst the organized papers. The sound of her head hitting the wood echoed in the quiet office. My heart pounded. I rushed to her cubicle, adrenaline surging. Alina, are you okay? I whispered, my voice trembling, afraid of what I might find or what might still be there watching. I gently turned her over. Her face was ashen, but what truly horrified me were the faint, almost glowing, red marks on her inner arm. They looked like deep, thin scratches, an unnatural pattern. The realization hit me like a physical blow. The assistant wasn't just imaginary, it was real, and it demanded a terrifying physical toll, feeding on Alina, leaving its horrifying mark. The air around us felt thick, heavy, charged with unseen malevolence. I felt its presence, cold and demanding, lingering near Alina, near the empty chair. It was still there, observing me. I scrambled back, my mind screaming for me to flee. I had to get out, away from this place, away from Alina and her monstrous assistant. My life felt suddenly, terrifyingly in danger. Alina stirred, her eyes fluttering open. She looked at me, a flicker of something, perhaps a warning, perhaps a plea in their haunted depths, before she slipped back into unconsciousness. I knew the unseen thing was watching me, assessing me. Had it chosen Alina, or was it choosing its next victim? The thought sent a fresh wave of paralyzing panic through me. I didn't wait. I grabbed my bag, my heart hammering against my ribs, and ran. I didn't care about the report, about my job. I just needed to escape the horror of that office. The drive home was a blur of frantic terror. Every shadow seemed to move, every sound amplified. I kept glancing in my rearview mirror, half expecting to see a pale face or, worse, an empty chair. I quit the next day. I couldn't set foot in that office again, not after what I witnessed. A simple email, a phone call, anything to sever ties with Sterling and Co. forever. The horror lingered, a cold dread that clung to me like a shroud. I couldn't shake the image of Alina's haunted eyes or the guttural whisper from the empty chair. It was branded into my mind. I was left with the chilling certainty that Alina's unnerving perfection came at an unspeakable cost. A life force, a piece of her soul, traded for flawless, inhuman efficiency. The invisible assistant, was it still in that office, seeking its next source of sustenance? Or had it perhaps, in those moments of shared terror, left a subtle, lingering mark on me? I check my arm often now, a nervous habit. The mark is faint, almost invisible, but I know it's there. A silent reminder of the price of unseen help and the horror that could still be waiting. Sometimes, in the quiet of my new apartment, I feel a sudden cold spot, and I hear a faint, sibilant whisper just at the edge of hearing. The invisible assistant, it followed me. Story 2, I'm Alex, a project manager at Synergy Solutions. This happened to me and my team. Our small group, Liam, Chloe, Ben, and I, were drowning under the Phoenix project deadlines. It was an impossible task. The pressure was immense, a constant, crushing weight. We were working brutal hours, barely sleeping, fueled by caffeine and a desperate hope to just make it through the week. Our lives revolved around that project. Liam, our lead developer, often looked like he hadn't slept in days. Chloe, our designer, was usually so vibrant, but now her eyes held a permanent weariness. Ben, the newest, seemed perpetually on edge. We were a tight-knit team, but the stress was fraying those bonds. Conversations became curt, patience wore thin. We were all just trying to survive the Phoenix project's relentless demands day in and day out. Sleep, when it came, was rarely restful. My dreams became a swirling chaos of code and impossible deadlines. I often woke up more tired than when I went to bed, a vague sense of unease clinging to me. Then the dreams changed. They became identical, increasingly vivid for all of us. I'd find myself in a distorted version of our office, the walls warped, the lights flickering erratically, casting long, unsettling shadows. Always there was an entity, a shadowy, gaunt figure just out of focus, always lurking at the periphery of my vision. It never moved, never spoke, but its presence was a palpable weight of dread. I'd try to turn to get a clear look, but it would always shift, remaining just out of my direct gaze. A phantom limb, a fleeting glimpse of something profoundly wrong, always watching me. The air in these dreams was thick with a silent, oppressive expectation. I'd feel an intense cold, a shiver that permeated my very bones, even though I was tucked warmly in my bed. The entity's presence felt ancient, malevolent. It wasn't just a figment of stress. It felt like something truly evil, something that had found a way into my subconscious through the cracks of my exhaustion. Each night the dream grew more vivid, more terrifying. The entity seemed closer, its outlines slightly sharper. I could almost make out details, but my mind refused to let them fully resolve. I'd wake up gasping, heart pounding, the lingering feeling of being watched refusing to dissipate. The exhaustion piled up not just physically, but mentally from the nightly terror. The office in my dreams became a prison, a labyrinth of fear. Every corner held a potential glimpse of the lurking horror. I started dreading going to sleep, knowing what awaited me. I tried to rationalize it, to tell myself it was just stress, a hallucination brought on by sleep deprivation. But deep down, a chilling certainty began to form. This was different, this was real. The nightmares became a constant feature of my nights, a terrifying ritual. I carried the dread into my waking hours, feeling a perpetual sense of unease, even in the brightly lit office. One morning, over lukewarm coffee, Liam looked particularly haggard. "Rough night?" I asked, more out of habit than genuine inquiry. He just grunted, rubbing his eyes. "You wouldn't believe the dream I had," he mumbled. "Same one again, that damn office, all warped, and that thing always watching from the edges." My blood ran cold. "Wait, what thing? What did it look like?" I pressed, a sudden horrifying possibility dawning on me. Liam described it precisely. Later that day, Chloe mentioned a recurring nightmare during a break. "The office is all wrong," she said, shivering despite the warm room. "And there's this shadow always there." Ben, usually quiet, overheard us. His face went pale. "You guys too," he whispered, his voice barely audible. "The gaunt one in the corner." That was the chilling realization. We were all experiencing the exact same nightmare. The same distorted office, the same shadowy, gaunt entity. It wasn't just stress, it was shared. A growing unease settled over us, heavier than any project deadline. We tried to laugh it off, blaming collective exhaustion, but the smiles were forced, the fear in our eyes undeniable. How could 4 different people have the exact same detailed nightmare? It defied logic, it defied explanation. A cold dread began to creep into our waking hours. We started looking at each other differently, a silent question in our eyes. Are we going mad, or is something else happening here, something far more sinister? The shared nightmare, once a strange coincidence, became a terrifying bond. We were no longer just coworkers, we were fellow travelers in a dark, unsettling journey, bound by an unseen entity. Then the dream world started to bleed into our waking reality. It began subtly, almost imperceptibly, making us question our sanity, blurring the lines of what was real. The office lights, usually reliable, began to flicker erratically. Not a full power outage, just a momentary dip, a blink, enough to make us jump and glance around nervously. Cold spots appeared, not near windows or vents, but in the middle of rooms, sudden pockets of icy air that made the hairs on our arms stand up. We'd shiver, blaming the old building's AC. Faint whispers, barely audible, would drift through the air when we were alone, like someone calling our name just at the edge of hearing, always fading before we could pinpoint the source. Objects moved, not dramatically, just subtly. A pen on a desk, a stack of papers. We'd swear we left them one way, only to find them rearranged, slightly inexplicably. My coffee mug, always on my right, would sometimes appear on my left. A minor thing, easily dismissed, but the accumulation of these small anomalies began to chip away at our composure. We started checking locks, double-checking doors. Was someone playing pranks? A new security guard? But there was no one else, just us, trapped in this unsettling reality. The air in the office grew heavy, thick with unspoken dread. Every flicker, every whisper, every misplaced object amplified the terror we already felt from our shared nightmares. We tried to dismiss it, to rationalize, but the collective experience made it impossible. We were all seeing, feeling, hearing the same impossible things. Our reality was fracturing. The Phoenix Project was becoming a crucible, forging not success but a shared descent into a waking nightmare. We were losing our grip, and something was taking hold. Peripheral glimpses of the shadowy entity became more frequent, in reflections at the edge of vision. A fleeting shadow behind me in the glass of the meeting room, gone when I turned. Chloe swore she heard her name whispered distinctly right next to her ear when she was alone in the break room. She dropped her mug, shattering it on the floor, her face ashen. Liam, checking the server room late one night, saw a tall, dark figure standing between the humming racks. He froze, then bolted, convinced it was the dream entity made flesh. Ben had a full-blown panic attack. He was staring at his monitor, editing a presentation, when he saw it reflected in the dark screen, the shadowy entity standing directly behind him. He screamed, a raw, primal sound that echoed through the empty office. We rushed to him, finding him curled under his desk, sobbing, pointing frantically at the blank screen. Our team's sanity frayed. We became withdrawn, irritable, perpetually exhausted. The lines between sleep and waking, between reality and nightmare, had completely dissolved. We were constantly looking over our shoulders, jumping at every sound, convinced it was always there, just out of sight, waiting. The office, once a place of work, became a cage. Our productivity plummeted. How could we focus on spreadsheets and deadlines when an unseen, shared terror was slowly consuming our collective sanity? The project was doomed. We barely spoke except in hushed tones about it. The unspoken agreement was that we knew what it was, even if we couldn't describe it. The fear was a living, breathing thing between us. We were no longer a team, we were just four terrified individuals clinging to each other in a desperate attempt to fend off an encroaching, unseen horror. Our minds were breaking. The climax arrived during a critical, high-stress presentation. Our biggest client, our CEO, all in the conference room. The pressure was unbearable, a palpable anxiety in the air. Mid-sentence, the power momentarily cut out. Darkness plunged the room, followed by a collective gasp. Then the lights flickered back on, and there it was, clearly, in the corner. Its malevolent gaze was fixed on us, radiating an overwhelming dread that crushed the air from our lungs. Ben screamed, a guttural sound. Chloe collapsed, Liam was catatonic. I felt a profound, soul-crushing terror. That encounter shattered us. The project was immediately abandoned. Our team was disbanded, scattered like chaff in the wind. The company dismissed our claims as stress-induced psychosis. I've left that job, but the experience haunts me. I still struggle with sleep, see shadows in my peripheral vision, and feel a lingering sense of dread. The true horror, our collective vulnerability, might have opened a door to something that still watches, waiting. Story 3. This happened to me. Our marketing firm was a predictable hum of keyboards and coffee. I, a diligent worker, thrived in its mundane rhythm until Arthur arrived. Arthur was our resident eccentric. Known for his quirky hobbies, he'd bring in everything from antique compasses to peculiar taxidermy, always harmless, always a talking point. He was a decent guy, if a bit odd. His passion for collecting bizarre artifacts was legendary, but it never interfered with his work, or so we thought. The office was usually a hive of friendly chatter, a supportive environment. We were a team, a small family, navigating deadlines and client demands together. My days were structured, productive. I enjoyed the camaraderie, the shared jokes, the collective sigh of relief after a successful project. It felt safe, familiar. Then came the day Arthur arrived with it, a dark, heavily carved wooden box about the size of a shoebox tucked under his arm. It felt different. The wood was almost black, absorbing light rather than reflecting it. Strange, angular symbols were etched into its surface, foreign and unsettling to my eye. Arthur beamed. He placed it prominently on his desk, right next to his monitor, almost like a shrine. It dominated the space, drawing the eye despite its dark hue. A shiver ran down my spine. It wasn't just old, it felt ancient, burdened with untold stories. I couldn't shake the immediate sense of unease. Within days, subtle shifts began. Mark, usually so jovial, snapped at Sarah over a misplaced stapler. It was uncharacteristic, unsettling. Snappier comments became common. Tolerating minor annoyances seemed impossible. The office felt like a pressure cooker, ready to burst at any moment. I started experiencing inexplicable fatigue. 8 hours of sleep felt like 2, leaving me perpetually drained, my mind foggy and slow. A constant nagging feeling of unease settled in my stomach. It wasn't anxiety, but a deeper, more primal sense of dread always present. Office interactions grew strained, polite requests turned into demands, casual banter became loaded with passive aggression, the warmth vanished. Jokes fell flat, met with stony silence or forced, uncomfortable laughs. The once vibrant atmosphere curdled, replaced by a suffocating awkwardness. The entire office's vibe had shifted. It was like a subtle, pervasive chill that no amount of heating could dispel. We all felt it. Everyone seemed on edge, jumpy, but no one could pinpoint the cause. We blamed stress, deadlines, the weather, anything but the truth. Petty arguments became commonplace. A minor disagreement over printer paper would escalate into a shouting match, fueled by irrational anger. Once friendly coworkers now eyed each other with suspicion. Trust eroded, replaced by a silent, simmering distrust that permeated every interaction. The general atmosphere grew heavy, oppressive. It felt like walking through treacle, every movement, every word, and effort against an unseen force. Minor accidents increased. A spilled coffee ruined important documents, leading to disproportionate outrage. It was more than just clumsiness. Equipment malfunctions became routine. Computers crashed, printers jammed endlessly, phones went dead. Small annoyances that felt like deliberate sabotage. A printer jam, normally a minor inconvenience, ignited a heated debate about responsibility and competence. The smallest spark caused an inferno. I started feeling a profound sense of dread before coming to work. My stomach would clench, my heart race. The office was no longer a sanctuary. The office felt smaller, suffocating. The walls seemed to close in, the air thick with unspoken animosity. Escape felt like the only option. My concentration suffered terribly. Simple tasks felt insurmountable. My mind wandered, filled with fragmented anxieties and irrational fears. Vivid, disturbing dreams plagued my nights. Shadows moved, whispers echoed, and strange, symbolic carvings from the box appeared everywhere. I'd wake up more tired than I'd gone to sleep, my body heavy, my mind still reeling from the nightmares. Rest was a distant memory. A growing sense of paranoia took hold. I suspected colleagues were talking about me, plotting. Every glance felt like a judgment, every whisper a conspiracy. Arthur, meanwhile, appeared gaunt and withdrawn. His usual quirky energy was gone, replaced by a hollow, almost spectral presence. His focus was intense, almost manic. He'd stare at his screen for hours, unblinking, his fingers flying across the keyboard with unnatural speed. Sometimes I'd catch him muttering to the artifact, low words, almost a chant. He seemed to be communing with it, lost in its dark spell. The artifact seemed to draw his attention, a magnetic pull. He was its keeper, but also, increasingly, its captive. This was not the Arthur I knew. A pervasive cold spot settled around Arthur's desk. Even in the height of summer, a distinct chill emanated from his corner, raising goosebumps. A faint, metallic odor like old blood or rusty iron became noticeable. It clung to the air around the box, an unsettling, persistent smell. I felt a strange, morbid pull towards the artifact. A desire to examine its carvings, to understand its secrets, yet I resisted its dark allure. But an equally strong repulsion held me back. My instincts screamed danger, warning me to keep my distance, to not touch its sinister surface. Driven by my mounting dread, I started researching similar historical objects online. I needed answers, something to explain the office's decay. Unsettling parallels emerged. Then came the breaking point. A violent argument erupted between Mark and Sarah, two usually calm colleagues. It escalated quickly, terrifyingly. Their shouting turned to shoving. A physical altercation unheard of in our office nearly broke out. Security had to intervene. It was chaos. Moments later, a heavy filing cabinet toppled, narrowly missing a junior intern. A gasp of collective horror filled the now silent office. In that chilling silence, I realized the truth. The artifact. It was the catalyst feeding on our negativity, amplifying our worst impulses. During lunch, overwhelmed by the oppressive atmosphere, I approached Arthur's desk. He was gone, probably in a trance somewhere. The artifact seemed to pulse with dark energy, a faint vibration against the air. It hummed with a malevolent life, drawing me closer. Visions flooded my mind, past office conflicts, petty jealousies, all magnified. It fed on negative emotions, a parasitic entity sustaining itself. Horrified, I acted. With trembling hands, I discreetly knocked the box into a waste bin, then quickly covered it. Out of sight, hopefully out of mind. The office gradually returned to normal. The arguments ceased, the laughter returned. But trust was broken and some colleagues, including Arthur, left. I'm left with a profound dread. Was its influence truly eradicated, or did it find a new home, a new office to poison? I'll never know. Story 4. My first week at the new corporate job felt like stepping into a beige, mundane haven. I was just another face in a sea of cubicles. My cubicle was next to Arthur's. He was quiet, unassuming, almost invisible, just another cog in the machine, or so I initially thought. Our introductions were brief, a mumbled hello over the partition. He rarely made eye contact, always seeming to focus intently on his screen. I dismissed his reticence as shyness. This was a big company, plenty of people kept to themselves, nothing out of the ordinary, I told myself. I was eager to fit in, to prove myself. The office hummed with mundane tasks, a comforting rhythm that masked what lay beneath. Then I started noticing it. Arthur's gaze, when he thought no one was watching, his eyes would fix on something or nothing with an unnerving intensity. It wasn't curiosity, it was something else, something primal. A predatory stillness that sent a shiver down my spine, even from across the cubicle wall. He'd quickly avert his eyes if I looked his way, returning to his work with a practiced, almost too quick movement. It felt like a mask. This happened to me. The quiet, unassuming facade began to crack, revealing glimpses of something darker, something I couldn't quite place. I tried to rationalize it, blaming my new job jitters, the stress of learning new systems, but the feeling of unease persisted. His silence, once just quiet, now felt heavy, watchful. I started feeling like I was being observed, even when Arthur was facing his own screen. A fleeting glance, a lingering shadow. These small details chipped away at my sense of security, building a quiet dread. He was always the first to arrive, the last to leave. A dedicated employee or something more obsessive? I couldn't shake the question. His desk was meticulously organized, almost clinical. No personal touches, no photos, just sterile order. I found myself subconsciously tracking his movements, trying to find a pattern, an explanation for the unsettling feeling he evoked. Then came the digital glimpses. One afternoon, I caught a fleeting view of his computer screen as he leaned back. It wasn't work, definitely not. The images flashed too quickly, but they were dark, unsettling. A seed of dread was planted. I saw snippets of text too, not corporate jargon, but strange, coded language. It looked like some kind of forum, but not one I recognized. My heart hammered. Was it a prank, some obscure hobby? My gut told me it was far more sinister. I tried to peek again casually, but he was always too quick. The screen was back to spreadsheets, the mask firmly in place. The memory of those dark images festered. They were grainy, almost abstract, yet profoundly disturbing. I couldn't shake them. I started taking longer routes to the break room, hoping to catch a glimpse. My casual curiosity had morphed into something obsessive. Once I saw a flash of what looked like a satellite map pinpointing a specific rural location. My blood ran cold. The wrongness deepened. This wasn't just a quirky coworker. There was something seriously amiss, something hidden in plain sight. I began to dread coming to work, the thought of being near him, the unknown horrors lurking on his screen, a constant weight. Then the cryptic calls started. In the break room, hushed, intense conversations. Arthur's voice, usually so flat, now held a chilling edge. I pretended to be engrossed in my lunch, but my ears strained. Fragmented phrases, chilling and unsettling, pierced the mundane office noise. "The package is ready," he whispered, his voice barely audible. My fork clattered against my plate, a loud sound in the sudden silence. Another time in the empty hallway I heard, "They won't suspect a thing." My heart pounded against my ribs like a trapped bird. He always chose isolated spots for these calls, his back often to any potential listeners, but I was listening. The words were always vague yet pregnant with sinister undertones. It felt like I was eavesdropping on a different life, a terrifying secret. His demeanor would shift instantly when he hung up, back to the quiet, unassuming Arthur. It was a flawless, terrifying transition. I started avoiding the break room, eating lunch at my desk. The thought of encountering him during one of those calls filled me with dread. I knew I shouldn't be listening, shouldn't be seeing these things, but the horror was like a magnet pulling me closer. The unsettling feeling of a hidden world, a dark current beneath the corporate veneer, consumed my thoughts. Then Arthur's unusual interest in my personal life began, probing questions about my commute, my evenings, my weekend plans. They felt too intimate, too specific. His eyes, though seemingly friendly, held that same unsettling intensity. It wasn't friendly curiosity. My growing fear prompted discreet online research into his name. I needed answers, something to explain the escalating paranoia. I searched local news archives, public records, anything, but Arthur seemed to be a ghost, leaving no digital footprint of note. The lack of information was almost as terrifying as finding something. It felt like he was deliberately erasing himself, hiding. One day, Arthur left his desk for a moment, leaving his screen unlocked. My heart jumped into my throat. This happened to me. An open tab, a dark web forum. The word trophies jumped out at me, chilling me to the bone. My blood ran cold. Next to it, another tab, a local news report. An unsolved disappearance from months ago. A young woman vanished without a trace. The photo, the details, the location. It eerily connected to the satellite map I'd glimpsed earlier. Undeniable proof. Pure terror washed over me. My breath hitched. He was a predator, hiding in plain sight, just another quiet coworker. The realization hit me like a physical blow. Arthur returned. His eyes, usually so guarded, met mine. He saw my face, saw the horror, saw that I knew. His mask dropped. The predatory hostility in his gaze was raw, terrifying. He was no longer Arthur, the quiet coworker. He was pure, unadulterated evil. I scrambled, a frantic, heart-pounding escape from the office. The sound of his chair scraping back still echoes. I'll never forget that night. Arthur's apprehension dominated headlines. The shocking news of his heinous double life, a serial killer hiding among us, rocked the city. My trauma lingers. I see predators everywhere now. True evil hides in plain sight, and the horror for me continues. Story 5. This happened to me. Mark was our office workhorse, first in, last out. We admired his dedication. He was a dependable pillar. Mark never sleeps, we'd joke. His commitment was legendary, superhuman. He'd arrive before dawn, car first, often there when I left, a lone light in the dark building. His routine was clockwork, same coffee, lunch, intensity. We assumed he just loved his job. He became an office fixture, a silent testament to diligence. No one questioned it at first. Then subtle changes, Mark's energy waned. He looked perpetually tired, weariness etching his face. His appearance grew unkempt, wrinkled shirts, uncombed hair out of character. It was unsettling. Colleagues suggested he go home. He'd offer flimsy excuses. Just one more email. Voice strained. Excuses grew frequent, desperate. He seemed afraid to leave, inventing tasks. Something felt wrong. I started to worry. This wasn't dedication, it was unhealthy. His work quality even suffered. Reluctance to leave became outright refusal. He'd tense up whenever going home arose, disturbing. We witnessed his physical deterioration, wasting away before our eyes, a terrifying fade. His skin grew alarmingly pale, translucent. Deep, bruised circles shadowed his sunken, lifeless eyes. He lost noticeable weight, clothes hung loosely, making him fragile. He refused food. Suggestion of rest triggered intense agitation. He'd snap, then apologize, looking terrified. Strange incidents began. After hours, unsettling noises from his area, whispers, rustling. Items on his desk rearranged, pens moved, papers shifted. He denied touching them, eyes wide. A pervasive cold spot developed around his cubicle, a chilling draft even on warm days. I felt watched whenever Mark was alone, prickling sensation, unseen eyes upon me. One evening, I stayed late. He'd stare blankly, then nervously glance around, expecting something. The office transformed after dark. Hum became drone, shadows stretched, twisting. It felt alive. I heard him then. Mark was whispering, head tilted, listening intently to an invisible speaker. He'd gesture vaguely, pleading, towards empty spaces. His one-sided conversations were unsettling, urgent. His darting eyes never settled. He tracked something unseen, constantly moving, pressing in. Mark developed territorial possessiveness. He'd glare at anyone lingering, a warning in his hollow gaze. He was terrified of leaving. Stepping out seemed to fill him with paralyzing dread. Colleagues gave him wide berth. The atmosphere around Mark was heavy, oppressive, palpable discomfort. Whispers turned to rumors. Something's wrong with him, with this place. Deep unease settled. I couldn't shake the feeling Mark was trapped, not by choice. I had to do something. With dread, I decided to stay late and confront him. That night, I deliberately lingered. Pretending to work, my heart pounded frantically. The office was eerily quiet, silence thick, heavy, save for the server room hum. I found Mark slumped at his desk, head on arms, utterly drained, barely breathing. Then I saw it, a shadowy presence, indistinct, hovering behind him, tendrils connecting to his back. It was clinging to him, parasitic darkness. My breath hitched. This was real, tangible horror. I watched, paralyzed, as it siphoned his energy. His frail form diminished, life force draining. My heart hammered, frantic drumbeat of terror. Instinct screamed to run, but I was frozen. Summoning courage, I croaked his name. Mark, my voice thin in the oppressive silence. He stirred, slowly lifting his head. His eyes, now locked on mine, pleaded with agony. "It won't let me go," he whispered, voice dry. "I'm trapped, please, help me." As he spoke, the entity pulsed, growing denser, darker. A low growl vibrated, chilling me. Mark reached a trembling hand, a desperate gesture. His eyes screamed for freedom. The entity tightened its grip. Mark's body convulsed, a silent spasm. His plea died. A sudden, intense cold swept over the office, pure dread. The entity's warning. The air crackled. I saw its eyes, two burning crimson pinpricks in the shadow, fixed on me. I stumbled back, tripping, a primal scream caught. This was beyond comprehension. The entity solidified, gaunt, skeletal figure cloaked in shadows, face distorted, blurred again. I fled, don't remember running, just escape. Burst out, gasping, leaving Mark to his fate. Mark was never seen again. No one found him. Vanished, another ghost story in that accursed office. I quit. The office still holds dread. Haunted by Mark, the entity waits for its next victim.